You say things to yourself that you wouldn't say to your worst enemy.
I will meditate with infrared light, and I will do that with a LED face mask. Hey guys, it's Robin, and welcome back to the Science of Self-Care. Today we're going to be talking about mental self-care specifically, and I'm so excited because I have a guest on the channel today, Jael from A Life of Learning, a channel here on YouTube that's all about performing your best as a student and also as a working person, how you can optimize your learning but do so in a healthy way. We both really value performance through lifestyle balance rather than performance despite lifestyle balance. So it's a pleasure to welcome her here on the channel.
Hi, so my name is Jael and I am currently studying a master's in educational sciences. So I started my channel, A Life of Learning, because I realized at some point in my life that there are so many very important study but also general life skills that we aren't taught in schools, but that would definitely help us out a lot if we would have been. And with my channel I wanted to sort of fill this gap of knowledge that a lot of people have, at least based on the knowledge that I have gained both as a student, but especially in my studies in the educational sciences. And mental self-care is a very important topic to me because my brain can be very much against me sometimes. My brain does not always want to work along with the things that I want to do, I want to achieve. And yeah, through experiencing this, I also started wondering, like, what can I do about this? How can I sort of work along with my brain so that I can still do the things that I want to do and feel the best that I can? So I am super excited to be talking about this topic today with Robin, and I hope we can share some valuable insights with you.
I'm really excited to talk about this topic with you, and I want to have this video have a little bit of a different format, more Q&A style, more conversational. I think it's a really interesting topic that a lot of people can relate to, struggling to actually have their mind work for them and not against them. And I wanted to ask if you have one mental self-care tip or trick that you're currently doing that you find is really working for you.
Yeah, so a mental self-care thing that I have recently started to do is to sort of retrain my inner monologue to be more positive. Because yeah, I think it's a thing that a lot of people will recognize, that sometimes you say things to yourself that you wouldn't say to your worst enemy, or at least not to a friend or a family member or someone that you care about. So one of the things that I've been focusing on recently is being very aware of the things that I sort of say to myself. And whenever I notice that I'm saying something that is not kind, not making me feel any better, not productive, to say something else to myself, to change the thing that I said first that might not be as helpful or positive, such as something like, oh, I'm such an idiot for doing this. I will try to be like, no, I'm not an idiot. People make mistakes. It's okay. I made a mistake. It's no big deal. And really consciously saying those more positive, more helpful things to myself. Yeah, so that is something that I recently started to do that has helped me a lot.
Thank you so much for sharing. Do you have any resources like books or other YouTube channels or podcasts that have really helped you become more adamant about training and reprogramming that part of your inner dialogue?
Yeah, so I think not necessarily any books or content that I watched, but I think it is something that I started realizing a lot when I was in therapy. I actually made a video on my channel about this as well, but I did EMDR therapy to help me process some small traumatic things that I experienced growing up as a gifted child. And there we talked a lot about like, I guess what you would call inner child work. So realizing that the younger version of you is still inside of you, and sort of realizing that you can talk with compassion and understanding to that inner child. So I think that was sort of what kind of made me start to think about it in such a way that, like, I am myself, of course, but I can also talk to myself in a way that is caring and supportive.
Thank you for sharing. This is making me think of two books that I've actually recently read. The first one is The Mountain Is You, great book, and the second is No Bad Parts. I will link both those books below, but if you want to explore a lot of these topics, I think both of these books are a great place to start as well. I think this is something a lot of people can relate to, so thank you for sharing that. As for myself, for this question of something that I've been doing, a mental self-care habit, I've been doing this in this format for about a year and a half, but I've realized it's made such a difference for me. Every single morning, right when I wake up, even if I have to wake up at a very ungodly early hour, I will meditate for 10 minutes, but I will not just meditate alone. I will meditate with infrared light, and I will do that with a LED face mask. I know some people actually have access to infrared saunas or infrared larger light systems, but I just have a face mask. It's amazing. It is so calming and it feels like you're in a warm embrace, and it's the best way for me to wake up every morning. I just clear my mind, have this red light shining on me, and I've found that if I start my day like this every single day, it literally only takes 10 minutes, but it makes such a big difference to just how I enter the day. So that's one thing that has been really working for me.
That sounds like a really nice way to start your morning. I don't think I've ever heard of the use of infrared light for that, but yeah, I definitely recognize that just starting your day off right in whatever shape that takes for you is also really important to just living the rest of your day in the best way that you can.
I absolutely agree with that. So now I want to actually take a step back and ask if there was ever a point, kind of maybe a breaking point at which you realized that mental self-care needed to take a priority in your life. Was there ever a point like that for you?
Yeah, so I think the first moment I realized the importance of just mental health and the impact that mental health can have on you was when I was around, I think, 18 years old, when I first got diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, because that was really a moment where I realized that bad mental health can have such a strong impact on your life. But I think in that moment I mostly sort of dealt with that only through therapy, which is very important, definitely. If you struggle with mental health and you have access to therapy, then definitely go to therapy. But I think really apart from therapy, making it a central part of my life started, I think, at the end of university, my bachelor's, so the program that Robin and I both did, the place where we met. With my thesis, I had a lot of issues because this was in a time where Corona was happening, and I just got really behind due to all kinds of circumstances. And this was also a point where my boyfriend kind of moved in with me. So it was the first time that there was someone that sort of constantly saw my mental state. And because everything was going so badly with the thesis, I was constantly stressed, constantly crying. I'm a very emotional person, and whenever I feel stressed or angry or whatever, the first thing I do is just cry. And this was the first time that someone was really that close of a witness to it, I guess. And that made me realize, like, okay, this is not okay. This is not how you should live your life. And a few weeks into the project, I also really started realizing that my mental health throughout this process, at least this process was not worth risking my mental health for. So I think that was the moment where I really actively started prioritizing it.
Wow, yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think it's pretty brave that in such a tough time you actually opened up your private space to someone, obviously someone you love and trust, your boyfriend, but I think that's brave in and of itself, because I think a lot of us get used to maybe hiding different parts of ourselves from public view, but the fact that you were able to share that with someone and realize, hey, maybe it doesn't have to be like this, is pretty powerful. I think my whole life I've had little moments where I've just had to say, hey, I need to slow down now and focus on self-care. But during COVID, I also had one of those because I was working in a laboratory, and anyone who knows me personally, I love biomedicine, I love studying the research, but I do not like working in a laboratory, and this was during COVID, so I was working in a laboratory alone to avoid contact with other people, and I was working night shifts also to avoid contact with people as much as possible. So I was working in this laboratory alone, feeling super overwhelmed, doing something that I don't enjoy doing, lab work. It stresses me out. And it was like dark winter alone every night going to this lab. It was slowly driving me crazy to the point that one night I was taking a shower, and it's the only time I've had kind of a panic attack. I just could not really breathe, and it was such a, like, I've read so much about panic attacks and I'm very aware of what they are, so to experience that was very interesting in a way, to think, wow, there's literally a physiological response happening in my body right now telling me that something needs to change. And so I ended up also talking to my advisors, and I got through the project in the end just fine, but it was a moment where I thought my body really knows what's right for me and what's not. And ever since that moment, which was during COVID, I've been very conscious about listening to my intuition when I have to make a life decision. Just feeling physically, how do I intuitively feel about this? Is this something that's going to energize me, or is it going to slowly chip away at my morale and stress me out? And that's also the moment where I stopped doing things because it was socially validated or prestigious. I always wanted to like working in a lab because in my mind it's something that's prestigious, and I really admire scientists. Both my parents are scientists, but it's just not for me. And actually recognizing that and stepping into that and leaning into things that I love to do has been really empowering and has helped me find a lot more balance in life. So that was a recent breaking point, but I think that it is something I'm always going back and forth on, taking little moments of break whenever I feel my body telling me that I need it.
Yeah, I really recognize that physical part. Like, I have not really had a panic attack, anxiety attacks, but those are not as physiologically extreme. But I do know, for example, that like I have this thing where a specific part of the left side of my chest starts like cramping, and that is just how I can tell, like, okay, I need to slow something down, because that is like one really strong physiological sign that I like, yeah, now have really started to notice. It's just always present whenever I'm not feeling 100% mentally, when I'm really stressed. So yeah, I find it very nice that you also talk about like the way your body reacts. And I think a big part of mental self-care is also definitely the ability to pick up on those signs.
Thank you. To switch gears a bit into a lighthearted mode, is there anything kind of weird that you do, funky, weird, related to mental health or self-care? I wanted to leave it an open-ended question. What's kind of the weirdest mental self-care tip or trick that you practice
Yeah, so I think, I think it's a bit in line with this trying to sort of retrain my inner monologue, but I can sometimes be very like insecure when things are difficult. I think it's also a bit of the growing up as a gifted child remnant that you don't really learn how to struggle when you're a kid. So then when you are an adult, you haven't really learned how to cope with the feeling of having to do something that is really hard. But I've kind of trained myself to, every time that I doubt myself, say like, the people can do hard things. I think it was Kim Kardashian who said it. Like, it's this meme. But yeah, just the saying of people can do hard things. It's something that I like telling to myself, and it does really help me to get over this fear of doing things that don't come easy to me.
I love that. Using a Kardashian meme for positive mental self-care. As opposed to sometimes I feel like Kardashian content can chip away at our mental health. Something that really helps me is tapping into my inner child, and I feel like there are so many ways to do that. There was a period where I would every morning go for a light jog to a park and slide down the slide just to feel like playful and young, but there's so many versions of this. I recently started roller skating. Even sometimes dancing to old songs that I used to listen to when I was little. I feel like getting in touch with that younger version of yourself that is perhaps a little more carefree and sometimes closer to who you truly are at your core. It is sometimes a little weird to see adults doing funky things, but I highly recommend just digging in the dirt or doing something very childlike. It is so nourishing mentally.
Yeah, I can definitely see how that would be that would be something that is very positive for your mental health, because I think at some point, in the school system, we learn to get so focused on the adult things, the knowledge and the working, and the play part of life just disappears. And I can definitely see how actively seeking out the play in life by tapping into your inner child is a very positive thing. I should probably do that too. I think slides and swings are really fun. I don't understand why there are no adult versions of those things, because who doesn't like to do those things?
I completely agree, and I feel like an adult's acceptable version of that is a water park. I love water parks so much. I sometimes dream about water parks. Yes, I think there are some occasions in which there are adult acceptable ways to play, just sometimes about actively seeking it out. So here we are talking about the importance of mental self-care, but I think for a lot of people, when you get to that breaking point, it's sometimes so overwhelming when you're overtired to feel like, okay, now I have to somehow practice mental self-care and make it a priority. It feels like another thing to do. Do you have any recommendations for anyone who is feeling a little bit overwhelmed but wants to start to work on their mental self-care, doesn't know where to start? What might you recommend from personal experience?
So I definitely recognize this feeling a lot. When you are already overwhelmed, how to do more to also take care of your mental health. But I think the thing I realized was just that you cannot do more if you're already struggling. So this goal of trying to keep everything the same as it is and just include mental self-care on top of that while you are not feeling mentally well, it's just not a realistic way of going about it. So I think I sort of do this thing where I have a bare minimum of things that I need to do, and that bare minimum sets the bar really low. It's really like have 3 meals a day, taking a shower and brushing my teeth, but just having this very low bar bare minimum task list that leaves enough space to actually do the mental self-care that you need. Because yeah, I've tried I've really tried, but I've always found that it's not realistic to try to do everything the same way as you did it before, while also incorporating mental self-care. And yeah, like, it always feels like there's a lot that you have to do, but the moment you really start reflecting on what it is that you really have to do, there are so many things that you can definitely temporarily let go of to first prioritize your mental health, and then you can just pick those things back up later when you are feeling better.
I love that point of realizing not everything can just stay the same and you add stuff on top of it. Something has to change. I completely agree with that. And I think a lot of times, especially people who are high performing and high achieving, they want to not do less, but just do better. And it's not really feasible to do that. So I relate to that very much. One thing that I have found has made such a big impact, and I think is very low barrier for everyone, is to take at least one walk a day. I, during COVID, realized that the only way I was gonna stay mentally sane was if I took a walk outside every day. I was getting cabin fever, and when I started walking every day, it was just a moment of fresh air, light physical activity, and it reminded me that I'm just one person in a bigger world. It really gets you out of your head. And I think it is a form of physical activity that is quite low barrier. So even if you are really exhausted and overtired, a walk will actually just benefit you. I don't think anyone has ever gone on a walk and regretted it. So that's something, no matter how overwhelmed I'm feeling, and sometimes I feel like I don't have the answers to anything, I just stop working, stop doing what I'm doing, and just step outside. And you don't even have to have any thoughts going through your head. Your only job is to put one foot in front of the other and do a little lap around the block, or maybe you want to go a little bit longer. There are no rules, but just getting outside is the only thing you have to do. So that's my one thing I make sure to do every day, and I really recommend everyone does. But was there anything that you feel like you still wanted to add about mental self-care?
I think we covered quite a lot. But yeah, I think what I just want everyone to know is that mental self-care is not a luxury. It's not something that you should do to reward yourself and should deprive yourself of when you feel like you haven't done enough to deserve it, because it is just, yeah, one of the bare necessities in life, to take care of your mental health. Because I've seen, both with myself and with people around me, the extent to which the consequences of bad mental health can go, and it's not worth risking it to get to that point. So I think it's very important to be alert, to be aware of your mental health, and really take steps if you feel like something is not going well. Like the same way, if you feel like you are really sick for like 2 weeks, you will go to a doctor at some point. Like if you feel mentally unhealthy for a while, then do something about it, seek help. It's not a luxury to do this necessary self-care, and take it seriously.
I think that is a beautiful point to end on. It's really all of self-care, physical and mental, is a journey. It's not something that you do once and you're all of a sudden healed and a different person. It's a lifelong process, and I really appreciate you sharing your experiences and tips and tricks, Jael. And if anyone wants to check out her channel, the link is posted down below.
Definitely, if you enjoyed this video, then feel very free to check out my channel as well. I talk a lot about mental health on my channel, and me and Robin also filmed a video for my channel which is about how to prepare your brain and body for performance, for studying or taking a test. So if that is something that you're also interested in, then definitely make sure to check out the video on my channel as well. And thank you so much, Robin, for having me on your channel.
Thank you for being on, and thank you so much for watching. If you have any personal mental self-care tips or tricks that you practice, please share down below. I love it when we can all share our different lifestyle habits and hopefully all help each other live happier and healthier lives. I look forward to seeing you next time.